Kilkerran's taking over Cadenhead.
We're good to go.
Oh, you guys are live.
We're live.
We are live.
Cara, you need a good scooch in.
Can you see me?
Keep your distance from me.
Oh, right, sorry.
Don't hear.
You weren't saying that last night. Action.
Right.
Okay, so welcome to the Whisky Exchange virtual whisky show. We're looking forward to taking you through 5 whiskies tonight. This is the first virtual whisky show that we've taken part in so far, and the first whisky tasting I think I've actually done with you of you.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to enjoying ourselves. Started already with a wee cocktail. So first of all, we'll introduce ourselves for those of you that haven't maybe met us before. My name's Nicole Lindsay. I am quite a new member to the team. Been here since last October, so it's just about coming up a year. I am not from Campbeltown, I'm from the island of Islay and worked for a distillery over there in the visitor centre experience previous. So enjoying my first year at Springbank and Kilkerran so far, although it's been an unusual year. Yeah. And tonight,
your 6 months of work.
Tonight joining me is Grant McPherson.
Yeah, my name is Gavin McPherson. I'm the UK sales manager for Springbank and Mitchell's Glengale Limited.
And this is Cara.
Yeah, I'm Cara Wilson, and I'm sad that we can't be doing this in person, but I suppose I can just talk to a camera instead. And we still get the whiskey, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. And although we're not doing this in person like we normally would be, I suppose you're all nice and comfy and sitting at home and enjoying your drams in the comfort
Of your jammies.
And we may well actually be seeing or speaking to people that ordinarily wouldn't have made it to London for the show. So that's quite good as well. So without further ado, like all of us here, I'm sure you're all desperate to get tucked into your whiskies. So we're going to start with the first dram. And Cara's going to tell us a bit about that, and I'll pour you one.
Pour me one in here, that'll be good. So our first dram of this evening is the Kilkerran 12-year-old, the signature kind of whiskey from our portfolio so far, and one of my personal favourites. It's matured 70% in bourbon casks and 30% in sherry, and it's got a little bit of peat smoke in there, but it's got this lovely waxy, oily mouthfeel as well, with lots of kind of vanilla and oranges.
Yeah.
But
so this is one of your favourites, isn't it?
This is one of my favourites. It's what's in the cocktail tonight. Those who are like avid cocktail fans will like to use the best ingredients in their cocktails. So this is our house cocktail. It's got Kilkerran 12-year-old, some lemon juice, couple of dashes of bitters in it, and a big dollop of orange marmalade. The orange marmalade, as we like to use the finest ingredients tonight, is a year old, but I think there's enough sugar in it to keep it tastes okay.
But made in Campbeltown.
Campbeltown. Made, if any of your regulars to Campbeltown, Donald Brown, who makes a good mean cocktail himself, but he also makes this lovely orange.
So Kilkerran 12. So this is the core edition in the range.
Bottled at 46%, and was kind of the main aim for when we started the distillery, wasn't it?
Grant, because when we first started the distillery, it was all about what age expressions we want to put in the market. And 12, Pat McCarty, who had sort of vision, that says, right, 12-year-old onto the market, and that was a long wait for it, but 12 years.
I think that was it. We were talking about updating our product sheets today, and it says the long wait on for the 12-year-old, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
But I suppose 12 years is a long time to kind of wait until a distillery puts out any kind of whiskey or kind of any main product to the market.
It's a huge investment as well.
Yeah.
Just get that money back into it.
Yeah.
So,
Not that we didn't put anything out to the market. We did have our work in progress, which are the lovely coloured bottles on the second shelf there, and that was kind of pre-releases to give people a little bit of an insight into.
So was the work in progress, was that a way of experimenting with different casks and seeing how the spirit matures and sort of honing that final Kilkerran 12
This like goes back
edition?
like a good party in Campbeltown, and when the distillery turns 3 years old, we had a big party. It's legally called Whisky. We can have this big party.
We can drink it all now.
So we opened a single cask during that sort of wee open day we had, and everybody was commenting how much drinkable it was for such a young whiskey, 3 years old, and saying, "Well, this can be bottled at this age." And it got us thinking. Yes, the plan was waiting for 12 years. So what can we do? And we thought, why not come up with this kind of work in progress series? Bottle of 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old on the way up to the 12-year-old, hence the name Work in Progress.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can see the packaging was the same, just a different colour represent each year.
We're actually missing number 7 tonight, which was in a green coloured package, but even we don't have any bottles. So if you're sitting with a bottle of Work in Progress 7 at home, you're doing pretty well, I think. We can't find any.
Initially, the makeup of the Work in Progress series was what we want to put towards the 12-year-old, the bourbon and sherry influence.
Yeah, the same.
Towards the end of doing the Work in Progress series, people were sitting asking, what's it like in bourbon, what's it like in sherry, what's it like in cask strength? So we thought we varied it up the last couple of Work in Progress just to sort of tease the market and what can be done from it.
And some of my favourite as well is, I think, probably number 5, the blue bourbon only maturation. I think Kilkerran works really well with bourbon.
Bourbon.
Yeah, I think it speaks for the spirit as well. Sherry is, love sherry maturation as well, but it can sometimes hide a multitude of sins if it's done right. Sometimes it can create its own sins as well. But
interesting with the cask strength version we've done as well, because it just gives the drinker that option of adding a wee splash of water until they want to drink it.
Exactly.
Ideal 46 is ideal drinking strength. My preference is no water added to whiskey, but certainly sometimes a wee drop just to help open it up type of idea. Doing that at cask strength gave the drinker the option.
And with the Kilkerran 12, obviously that bourbon influence is coming through more. 70% bourbon, 30% sherry. So at the moment, this is the only core edition in the range. We've got some exciting drams up ahead.
Yeah,
of future core editions.
We've got our suppose our limited releases of the 8-year-old as well, which are kind of becoming more of a core statement.
An annual limited
release, yeah. But there's not always consistency with the maturation in those as well.
That's the whole thing as well. Starting a new distillery, it's building that portfolio. Okay, yes, we had this was 12-year-old put on the market. Where else do we want to go? And doing that, the cask strength version, yes, we've always wanted to be 8 years old. Bringing in heavily peated, we'll talk about later on, stuff like that. So it's building that portfolio of different products and seeing what kind of market's there for it.
So first of all, there might be people watching this that are Kilkerran fans already. They've maybe followed the distillery since its establishment or re-establishment and are familiar with the products. But there might also be people watching at home that haven't drunk much Kilkerran in the past and are kind of experimenting or seeing what is on offer tonight. So we'll give you a wee bit of history as well as to the distillery, its reopening. We'll chat through the whiskies. Obviously, we've got another 4 to do after this as well, and also talk about the future of Kilkerran, what we have planned for the coming years. So first of all, Campbeltown has a long and colourful whisky history, and Glengyle Distillery has as well, I suppose. So Grant's been here for the whole to see the whole thing from 2004 to the present day. No, not since 1872.
He's got a really good moisturiser.
But maybe you can tell us a bit about the distillery and its founding, and then.
But I suppose you've got to really put it back to the regional status first of all, because Campbeltown was the whisky capital of the world. Used to approximately 34 distilleries in Campbeltown, and people ask why so many in such a small town. And you've got to look at it, what have we got here for making whiskey? So, there's the coal mine out at Macahanish, there's an ample peat source, there's, the farmers growing barley, etc. Probably the biggest thing was across all the Campbeltown block itself, where the ships used to come in, load up with whiskey, and take it across to the Ayrshire coast for the blending companies. So it suited this area for making whiskey. And the Mitchell family had a huge part to play in the distilleries in Campbeltown as well. There used to be 5 distilleries owned by the Mitchell family. There was Springbank, obviously, Glengyle, Ray Clachan, Dalmore, and Tobermory.
Well done for remembering all those.
I was like,
It's like counting on your fingers.
it's like, did I say 5? Yeah. Yeah, so it's a huge part. Obviously, the connection there with Springbank as well. So,
So initially, obviously Springbank was opened before Glengyle in 1828, but the two brothers who ran Springbank Distillery, that's really where Glengyle's story starts,
yes,
isn't it?
it's true. Yeah, because there was one point there was the two brothers running Springbank, and the story has the fellow over sheep. What to do with sheep, nobody really knows and wants to know.
It's undisclosed.
But yeah, there's certainly William left Springbank and set up Glengyle Distillery back in 1872. Unfortunately, it closed down in 1925, and during that time it was leaving closed. It was used for a rifle range during the war. Of lately, it was an agricultural store. And around about the year 2000, the buildings were coming up for sale, and Mr. Wright was looking to purchase land round about the distillery, and he purchased it, and I wanted to reopen the distillery. So, and I always had that connection there. So obviously the chairman of Springbanks is a great uncle who used to own Glengale Distillery. So bringing it back in the family and reopening it that way.
Yeah, it's amazing, really, isn't it? So there were a few things that are really symbolic, though, about the reopening of Glengale Distillery. Not only was it coming back to the family, because Mr. Wright's great-great-uncle had originally founded it in 1872, but also, as Grant said, it had closed in 1925 when there was that rapid downturn in the whisky industry. Sadly, a lot of the distilleries suffered and closed, Glengyle Distillery included. But with that, over the course of the years, there remained only two distilleries, Springbank and Glen Scotia, and the whisky regional status was threatened because there were only those two distilleries left. So,
yeah, definitely.
That
was probably one of the main reasons that they started up the distillery again. I think they bought the land or the building previously, but that was a big part of, wanting to make Campbeltown that whisky region again and bring back the history that we have. And tourism became such a big thing over the last few years until this awful virus which just came down on us. But having that regional kind of whisky status brings the whisky enthusiasts to your area. If you have 3 distilleries, it kind of solidifies you in people's minds. And we need to go to Campbeltown. That's a good whisky hub. Islay has such a pull, and Speyside has such a pull from the amount of distilleries they have there, their region. And I think when we were kind of looking at the opportunity to have a third distillery, that was a big part of it, just to get that regional status.
To
and
keep
you have
that
to have
regional status.
Yeah,
definitely put us back on the map.
I think it was because they managed to argue it because the Lowlands at the time had 3 distilleries. And so,
and if they were able to stay as a region, then we just need to open
get
one more in Campbelltown, and we'll be able to keep that regional status.
We only need to open it for 3 months of the year, but
I know, yeah.
Open the door one day a year.
So in 2004, the first spirit ran, and that cemented that kind of regional status and brought another distillery to the town, which is pretty amazing as well.
It's great, and the tourism's increased massively as well. I think obviously not this year, and hopefully next year it will kind of get back to that. But people are really enthusiastic about coming and seeing what's happening here, and there's a lot of unique things with the distilleries in Campbeltown as well.
Yeah. So one of the things I know from my point of view coming in, that was slightly confusing was the name. The name Kilkerran, but it's not made at Kilkerran Distillery, it's made at Glengyle Distillery. I know even ourselves we get confused. We're saying Kilkerran Whisky or Kilkerran Distillery, but it's not. So Kilkerran is the name of the whisky, but it's actually produced at Glengyle Distillery. So there are some reasons for that, and I'm sure Grant will be able to tell us a wee bit more about it. So Glengyle Distillery, the home of Kilkerran, but why the alternative name?
Yeah, certainly at that point as well, when we opened the distillery, the trademark was actually used by for a blend of whiskey sold in France. So the copyright wasn't actually ours to own. And we did inquire about purchasing it, but they thought, do you really want to sort of purchase it, or do you want to try and create a whole new sort of brand for the distillery? And we came up with Kilkerran because it's more in-fitting to the regional of Campbeltown, sort of obviously Keaton type idea. So yeah, if we to get on sort of copyright issues, it's Kilkerran distilled at Glengyle Distillery, and certainly, you know, Glen's more associated to distilleries with Speyside region type idea.
Yeah.
So
You don't tend to get distilleries in other places named after a glen. Yeah.
And Kilkerran, like, I think just works perfectly. It was a distillery opened up to kind of reinstate the Campbeltown whisky region, and Kilkerran is basically the name of the original settlement here in Campbeltown. And you know, you've got Kilkerran Road, and is there a Kilkerran Church as well? Is there? Have I made that up? Not that we go.
So the original
I think
name
it's
of
really good.
The settlement was Keenloch Kilkerran, wasn't it?
To be something for Campbeltown, and this Campbeltown whisky bringing back the Campbeltown region, I think that's what it was all about. And then having the Kilkerran name, it just makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, and you also don't want to have any confusion as well between a pre-existing blend and your new single malt that you're bringing to the market. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I hope everyone's enjoying that Kilkerran 12 at home. If you've tried Kilkerran whiskies before, I'm sure this is one that you've already had the opportunity to taste. You may be quite familiar with it. But it's a great one to start with and quite versatile. As you can see, that's the one we would probably nominate normally to experiment and try new things with ourselves. So we are going to try another whisky now. Now this one's a pre-release, so this is a sneak preview, which is quite exciting. As we've mentioned, Glengyle Distillery was reopened in 2004, and so that makes us 16 years old this year, and we plan to add to that core range a 16-year-old. So this is going to be joining the 12-year-old in very soon.
Very soon.
I don't know.
Can we say?
Coming soon.
We know.
Do we know? Nearly. It's on its way.
So there we go. So that's our 12-year-old. Actually, it's quite good to compare and contrast between the two just now, because
that's an interesting point,
the packaging is quite likely to change as well. And I think when we do release the 16-year-old, it will be in this new style of bottle, which is quite similar to the Springbank bottle, and there's good reason for that. So good reason for that, because obviously it's a lot more
efficient-wise. It's not so that we can have a fancy-looking bottle. These dumpy bottles, we had our machine put in the bottling hall, specially made to this size, and to get adjustments for different size bottles is quite expensive for that machinery. So instead of changing the bits, we've changed the bottles. So once we've run out of these tall clears and run down their stock, we will be going to the dumpy bottles, which will hopefully be next year. I also prefer the dumpy bottles.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's the same. You'll see it's a similar style to the Springbank, obviously using the same bottling line in there as well, and it fits in that automated line, which is obviously going to allow us to bottle more efficiently, keep up with demand, and it's quite an attractive bottle. I like it. I think it's nice.
Yes,
definitely fits into the distillery.
The only thing is, you can get less bottles on the shelf, because there's a problem space-wise.
So yeah, the 16-year-old is also going to be bottled at 46%, just like the 12-year-old. The cask maturation in this may vary from year to year, but this particular edition will be 96%. So it's very bourbon forward, 96% bourbon influence, and 4% Marsala wine.
Don't forget that 4%.
Which is basically one cask,
maybe one cask in the
Marsala
batting.
That's what it equates to.
So 46%, and it's going to be. I mean, this will be released very soon as a a new edition, but it will be a core release. So we'll be bottling more and more of this, and it should be available.
It doesn't mean that there'll be a lot of it to buy. Like most of our products you'll be familiar with, it kind of runs out pretty quick, but it will come out every year.
Yeah.
But just because of kind of stock variances and production variances, obviously the maturation might switch around year on year. Depends what we filled in.
Yeah, one of the things,
16 years ago, really.
Because when we brought out the 12-year-old a number of years back, initially we envisioned, right, okay, we'll bottle so many cases, that hopefully will keep us going for a year until the next year of maturation sort of comes on. But it was that popular 12-year-old, we thought we had to go back to we need actually use more from 2004 stock to get some more 12-year-old on the market, which obviously is a knock-on effect with what Marie cash have got available in years to come. So.
And it's decisions like that that just like set back the whole product range as well, which, you know, it can be difficult when you have people screaming out for more whiskey, and then you're kind of working with that, what happened 16 years ago.
We do want to mature someone for older.
For older as well, so we have to be restrained.
So we kind of, we did find this one, we did our tasting notes the other day, and we did find this one seemed less peaty. The peat was softer than the 12-year-old. Lots of kind of tropical fruit flavours, sort of citrus and malty.
Are we tasting it tonight at cask strength? So
we
are
50%. Marrying strength.
Marrying, so about 50.
About 50%, yeah.
But everyone at home, you've got 46.
Yes, that is very true.
So, yeah.
They're all privileged to get that 46.
But we're more privileged because we've got the higher strength.
Slightly stronger.
Anything to get you through.
That's an interesting topic about the marrying strength, because of what we do here at the distillery, obviously bottle on site, usually 6 months to a year before bottling the products, we do a marrying process where we mix all the cask types together.
Yeah, that's quite unusual. I hadn't seen that before. It's really interesting, yeah.
It's double working, but we feel it gives each casks a chance to sort of marry together.
Yeah, where other distilleries might, select the casks and vat them and they can be bottled fairly quickly. That doesn't happen here. So the casks are selected carefully, they're then vatted and then put back into what they call X casks.
Yeah, it's a third or fourth fill casks.
Yeah, so casks that are, like Grant said, had been filled a few times and then they've got less kind of maturational sort of value. They're not going to sort of add more flavour to the whisky. They're just going to be vessels for that vatting to sort of settle, isn't it? Yeah, before being bottled. So there'll be a 6-month process of that and then it goes to the bottling line.
Goes into line, yeah. So we used up to 50% and then come bottling, reduced to 46.
There's a funny slogan written on the vatting tank. Do you remember what it is? It's something like something about marriage and the honeymoon period.
Oh I always say they come in, they get married, and then they go back to the warehouse for their honeymoon period.
It's something like that. It's actually written on the batting tank.
If you ever come on one of my tours anyway around the distillery, just terrible dad jokes all the way through. There's like a bit of plywood, isn't there, hanging up in the malt bins, and we call that the computer. And that's an
interesting fact about for a sales team for us as well. Like, anybody who's out and about talking about the product has to actually go and work at the distillery. So we've been there, done the multi-mashing distilling process at both distilleries, and it's easy to talk about as well. Okay, you can get a book and see how to do the multi-mashing distilling process, but go and visit the learning at the distillery where you can get these wee stories from, and that's what we put forward to the general public.
That's what I really enjoy about working here and working near the distillery. You're in contact with the people making the whisky just about every single day. I mean, I was up actually this morning. They phoned me just to get up the road because they were filling the first casks of Kilkerran today for 2020. So I know there's quite a lot on our social media this week, so you'll see that on Monday. We've got ping pong on it, I think, just now. We got distracted. So
tune in for more ping pong through the week.
But the 16-year-old's a real benchmark for the distillery, and there's been a huge amount of sort of work and series events that led to the reopening of the distillery, which is quite interesting. So Like you said, Mr. Wright had bought the land. He'd asked Mr. McCarty to reinstate Glengyle as a working distillery, keeping that regional heritage, and bringing another distillery to the town, another single malt, Campbeltown single malt. But a lot of planning had to go into the redevelopment of the distillery, such as like sourcing the equipment, which is all really interesting. So Frank McCarty, who was our previous production manager, had started, I believe, his career at
Invergordon Distillery.
Invergordon,
which was it Ben Wivis or
Ben Wivis, yeah.
So Ben Wivis.
Around about the year 2000, Frank was approximately 40 years in the whisky industry. So he was tasked to source all the equipment for reopening Glengyle Distillery. And through his knowledge and experience, he knew the stills from Ben Wivis were lying in a warehouse not getting used. So yeah, it was the single malt produced up at Invergordon. And so he knew what style of spirit it produced in the line in the warehouse. So he phoned the owners up and says, "Can we purchase your stills?" And yeah, so we made an agreement, we purchased the stills, moved them down. So he knew what style of spirit.
So they obviously knew they wanted to make something that was kind of lighter, fruitier, had that kind of...
Yeah, so again, Frank wanted to put his wee sort of status into it, and then closely speaking to the chairman, Mr. Wright, he wanted to sort of make them slightly smaller in size and change the angle of the line arm.
It was kind of like he did two opposing things, because
shortening the neck,
shortening the neck would make it like a darker, heavier spirit, quite like oily and things like that. And then angling the line arm upwards kind of creates more reflux and would make the spirit lighter. So it was kind of two opposing things. And I do think Kilkerran has that like waxy, oily character.
But yeah, overall,
and
it's
it
quite
can
nice
be quite
and
light,
zesty and citrusy, and
which you get with these first two drams. Like you get a little bit of smoke in the 12, more so than the 16, I would say for myself. And then, but you get that really oily mouthfeel as well. And then when you go to like later on, and you've got like things in sherry casks, you kind of get more of like that robustness.
But like you said as well, like that spirit and its characteristics are marrying well and sort of accentuated in bourbon maturation.
Yeah.
Which
definitely
these two
for my
whiskies,
palate, that's what I prefer anyway.
That's it. You've got to think about everybody as well, because I personally like bourbon mature whiskies, but there's a market there for heavily sherry whiskies.
Definitely,
and stuff like that, right? Peated influence as well. So you've got to kind of create a sort of wide range of products for every taste.
Yeah,
I hope everyone's enjoying them at home. And if you do have any questions, I'm sure you know there's the chat bar. You can send them in to us. Don't worry. An hour is quite a short time to talk and answer many questions, but the three of us are going to stay on tonight till 9:30. We're going to all stay for the live chat
till we drop. Really,
just because we're
just going to drink till we
drop.
We're quite keen. We've
got this wall here.
We've not been let out of our boxes in a while, so we're keen to chat to you all, and we will get through as many questions as we can from the chat, perhaps, and then also live afterwards. So that'll be just fine.
I could go another one of those cocktails actually.
So with that 16, I mean, I don't know what everyone else is getting, but we tend to think that it had quite a nice sweetness, a fruitiness, like pear drops and that orange marmalade coming through. But there was lots of sort of, I remember us talking a lot about it being sticky and like fruity and sticky, like ginger cake, and there was a salted brine characteristic.
There's that depth and maturity to it as well. So it fits the range perfectly.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
so it'll be a nice addition.
And I'm kind of excited to see what comes like year after year as well, because it's like it might not always be the same maturation. And I'm like excited to see what each batch comes from that. Probably eventually we'll settle on one ring stop becomes more.
Yeah, and it's
standard and what we have there.
We might look at
but it's quite nice and fun to like have this few years where it probably won't be like that. You kind of get to experiment with what we've got as well.
Very much so.
Yeah.
More whiskey fans to try sample.
It's a hard job.
So that was the first two.
Shall we go to the third?
So we've the third dram that was selected, I believe, probably by Grant, because Grant's the UK sales manager, so he's really been the one that's organised this show and for us to be here tonight. We're happy to be here to help him and to like get involved. It's good fun. So the whiskey that he selected was for this third dram is also it's not one that's yeah. So so this is a cask sample. This is not something that you'll be able to buy. It's not been released. It's not planned to be released.
It's maturing away nicely.
Yeah, so Grant chose it, so I'm sure he can tell us more about it. Nice colour.
We did have to pre-taste these just
Yeah,
to
we
make
tried
sure
them all.
that the quality was A-okay.
And for this one here, the story really goes back to when the distilleries started producing. Like, they're saying we spent roughly 1.7 million on the distillery, so it's a huge cost for reopening the distillery. And I thought, how come? Yeah, the plan was waiting 12 years to get 12 on the market, but it's a huge cost. Obviously, getting the distillery open, but also you've got your production costs every year.
Yeah.
So how can we get some money back in?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want to go down the route of selling casks to private individuals because.
So we never did that.
Not for Glengyle. We learnt a lesson at Springbank because it became an administrative nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a nightmare today, but we still have to administrate today. So it's still going on today. Like, it's not just you stop selling casks and then that's
so stop selling casks.
It's like 20 years later.
But so we knew the implications of selling casks to private individuals.
that's
What can we do to get some money in? We came up with a bottle offer scheme where the first 6 casks filled at the distillery, you could buy a set. And so obviously got them on display behind us here. So there's port, Fino, Madeira, also bourbon and rum. So yeah, you could have bought the whole set, and if you're lucky enough to manage to purchase the set before the distillery turned 5 years old, you got a little miniature set of these as 5-year-old as well. So yeah.
So the sample that we're on just now in your pack quite well might be called a fresh Madeira. It's a 54% strength cask sample, and it's been in Madeira firstly and then bourbon.
Yeah, if anyone remembers like our big release for the 15th anniversary last year, we did, was it 16 single casks? And that was kind of from this and from the pack here. And after we had released these packs at 10 years old and sold them to whoever pre-bought them, obviously the rest of the whiskey was going to continue to age. And then it was put into all these bourbon barrels, basically because they thought there had been enough maturation from the other kind of. So
I mean, I suppose
say it was in
like,
the port,
yeah.
so it had maybe enough port and it was ready. And I thought when we did the big 15-year-old like single cask release, that all of the whiskies had a really like complex overlay. Normally we're so used to having bourbon first and then finishing it off with like sherry for a year or two.
But when it's been in those,
but when it was like the
initially,
opposite way, it was a really they all had like this interesting overlay of they had like that rich raisiny prunes if it was in the port, but then you would have like the lighter notes of the vanilla over the top with the bourbon.
Yeah,
and I think you kind of get this with this one because it's basically what would have been a single cask, but it wasn't put out to the market.
So it has a lovely sweetness.
It's got lots of Madeira influence to it there as well, but put it back into the bourbon for the last 6 years. It's given that vanilla bourbon influence to it as well. So you get that sweet Madeira note, but then there is that vanilla note to it as well.
I thought they were all so interesting, those single casks.
Yeah, it's just.
And we were actually
more of them to do.
I know.
I think do more. I think that's what you bought for the UK.
Yeah, probably will be the golden boy.
Oh.
But we were actually with our malts festival this year that was supposed to be in May, that obviously got cancelled. We were going to do a big tasting with all of the Kilkerran single casks, and we were going to do like every single one that we released, and that was going to be a big. We were all excited for that one.
It was, yeah.
But we're just going to have to do it. 2021.
The
Whiskey's still there.
Yeah, it's also still there for us. So.
We've not drank it yet, so.
I did look at it this morning, but enough. Tempting.
I have the UK one, the rum one.
Well, that was a shock.
I've got that one at home. That was really good. It wasn't like part of it, but it was the same, similar thing.
So yeah, certainly. I guess shows you as well. It's nice to experiment with different cask types. So yeah, bourbon and sherry are your main sort of maturation for whiskey, but doing this sort of different cask types, it just shows you what the whiskey can offer by adding a wee bit of depth and body to it from different cast types.
It's just something different, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's nice, yeah.
And it's the thing as well, it's nice to have the option there to experiment with the distilleries.
Yeah.
I think that's what Kilkerran kind of is about as well. You know, I know we do a lot of different things at Springbank, all under kind of the Hazelburn Longrow name, but with Kilkerran under that one name, you know, we do triple distillation, which is kind of under wraps, but not an awful lot of it. Obviously heavily peated and our normal kind of double distilled Kilkerran, and we're kind of open to doing more experiments with the process to see what we can kind of get from it.
Very much so,
Yeah. Stay tuned, there might be more coming.
Yeah.
Don't reveal too much.
I know. I was like, is that trade secrets?
What can I say? David said.
David.
So, yeah, there we go.
Yeah, the cash strength it's so smooth. There's no. I mean,
It's lovely.
To me, water's not required for that, but yeah.
And the other Madeira went to Taiwan. There was only one other
So
Madeira
initially
cask
they
that
filled
was bottled.
6 butts.
Yeah.
6 butts were initially filled in order to produce the sets.
Yeah, so we had all the cask types made up in sort of butt size, about 500 litres, just to get the kind of volume we're looking for. So that was the first 6 casks. But then we done a duplicate 6 just in case in the having to
any
run the
leaks
cask,
or
any
anything
leaks
like
or
that.
damages. So yeah, so
Especially when you have people like investing in it before, you have to be careful.
So don't want to go back to them and say,
about
hey,
that.
well, sorry, you purchased a set, but you can't supply the X bottle. So we had a backup plan type idea. And so after we bottled the sets, the remaining whiskey was refilled into bourbon casks. Normal size.
Oh, okay. And then that's what we did for our 15th anniversary. All these different markets, different maturations. And the Madeira, like I said, went to Taiwan. That was sent to the Taiwanese market. So, hope you've all enjoyed those so far. I don't know if you get any personal favourites up until now.
I mean, I love
Quite enjoying that Madeira.
I love the 12-year-old, but like all of the like Madeira and the lighter kind of finishes on it. I really enjoyed like rum is really good with the Kilkerran as well.
Yeah,
So I did really enjoy those
whiskey
single
rum.
casks.
Yeah.
So,
Hi, David. David's behind the camera.
David's going home now, so he's giving us a big wave.
Yeah.
Bye, David.
He's just been pulling funny faces the whole time.
Funny faces.
See you later.
So we've got we'll move on to our 4th whiskey, and this one, 4th whiskey is one that we produce or we release annually. It's an 8-year-old cask strength edition.
I think everyone went crazy for last year's, including us.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, I did as well. I would have said until
so yesterday
that my favourite Kilkerran whiskey yet has been the 2019 Recharge Sherry 8-year-old cask strength. But Cara introduced me when we were making our display, which we're in the Cadenhead's tasting room, and I'm sure some of you watching have been here before.
And are wondering where all those lovely bottles are.
And all the Cadenhead's bottles have been cleared.
We had to drink every single one of these.
We've taken over, Kilkerran's taken over the gantry for today. But it was quite fun yesterday because we were unpacking all these additions from the archive and taking out bottles that I personally haven't come across before because I'm fairly new. And the first edition of the 8-year-old cask strength,
I can't remember all the ones, but it's the 56.5. Or was it with that one? You sure?
Yeah, I think it was that one.
I don't know.
Because I've tried
It's one of them.
the bourbon from 2018 and I hadn't tried the one from previous. So we tried it yesterday and I think
it was cracking. Like I was the same. I'd never tried the bourbon ones. With the first 3 were bourbons. I think I'd maybe tried the one done in 2018. So yeah, I tried that beforehand when I was working in the tours, like doing the tours at Springbank. I definitely tried it then. But I tried the previous 2, like out on the road. When you go away, you do tastings in Europe
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, we've got this 8-year-old from a few years ago. Like, we're going to add that in. And I was like, yeah, great, we'll get to try that. And actually, I came into the shop today with my mum was asking me to buy her some cheap whiskey, staff discount. I was like, no problem, Mum, we'll come in. So she's went off with a couple of bottles of Springbank and a bottle of Kilkerran. And I was like to the shop manager, is that what 8-year-old is that? And he was like, it's the one of the bourbon ones. And I was like, I'll buy it. Take it. There was 2 bottles.
And there was 2 bottles,
to find.
so nobody start phoning in just now because it's mine. It's got my name on it.
Because we'll answer the phone and then hang up.
No, but
Don't call tomorrow morning at 9
I'll
because Nicole will be in here.
I'll be chapping at the door at 10 o'clock. But anyway, I mean, the sherry from last year I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
It was so dark. It was rich. It was fruity. It was a
spicy
sherry
as
bomb.
well.
It was very very rich and fruity
and the
spicy.
peat smoke really came through. You know, sherry sometimes can dull down that peaty flavour. I find it just kind of maybe numbs it a little bit.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was like it was still had that smoky peatedness as well.
Nice sort of balance to it,
Yeah. But this is the pre-release
Yeah.
of what's going to come out this year, or no,
Well,
2021.
financial year, but yes.
Yeah, it's going to be early 2021. It will be released. Not official date pinned down yet, but this is going to be another sherry one, 100% sherry, not the recharge sherry that we had last year. So this is another kind of sherry
It's
bomb.
really quite different.
Different style,
It's really
definitely,
quite
yeah.
different to the last one. It's not as dark either, I don't think. You know, the last
No,
one
it was like
much
black,
darker. It was
wasn't
really
it?
black. Yeah. And this one does still have a lot of that sherry influence, we thought, but it's different.
Much more sherry influence in this one though, because the last one had that kind of charness to it.
It really
was
did, yeah.
char, but this one certainly has got a nice sort of sherry balance to it.
But yeah, I think it's just a classic kind of
Mm-hmm.
Kilkerran and sherry. I think even if you're used to if you've tried some of the work in progress, but work in progress 5, 6, and 7, we'd done a bourbon only and a sherry only. So it kind of reminds me of that stuff, which is basically the same stuff. What year would it be 8 years old?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, because
so work in progress number 6. Oh no, it wouldn't be as late as that. Work in progress 4 would be an 8-year-old.
So an 8-year-old cask strength annual edition, about 9,000 bottles.
Yeah.
About 9,000 bottles. This one's cask strength.
Cask strength 59.8. You should have seen us before. We were like, what's the percentage? Did somebody look up?
So
59.8, I think.
yeah.
You're right on.
And they got a lot of kind of the nice salted, sweet caramel.
Salted caramel treacle.
Hazelnut.
There's a real ashy kind of smoky, spent matches kind of character
that
about it.
Valentine influence there in the background as well,
yeah.
which you're getting for the Campbeltown regional status as well. So there's something.
Yeah.
I think we get that in 90% of our whiskies. So
Yeah,
try
that coastal influence. So I mean,
which is
one of
quite
the
an
things
important
that
thing to-
is so that I love about and that drew me to Campbeltown to work here was the fact that, you know, it is that independence. Springbank and Glengale are both independently owned and always have been, really. And the fact that a lot or all of the process happens really on site. So, you know, that the fact that we say that coastal influence comes through in maybe 90% of our maturations or our releases is probably down to the fact that all of our whiskey is matured here.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got 9 warehouses now, just built warehouse number 8.
I think, I'm not sure. 8 warehouses.
8 warehouses.
Yeah.
But
it goes up to like warehouse 9, does it?
6.
Where's Wales 15?
6 dunnage and 3 rack.
3 rack now.
3 rack now.
Because we used to have 2 racked, was it?
So
we had a big one just recently built.
Yeah.
Just quite impressive, actually.
It's quite a nice big new warehouse. But all, you know, within 100 metres of the Campbeltown Loch. or so, roughly.
Yeah.
A very small circumference around the distillery. They're all there.
It's funny when those who have made the down to Campbeltown that long and winding way, it's certainly a well worthwhile trip down to see both distilleries, and you get an influence where the distillery is situated. It's right in the town centre, and people do sort of talk about, so where's this location in Campbeltown? Well, it's 2 minutes down the road. Oh, what about this place? Oh, it's just 2 minutes down. So literally everything is in walking distance, so it's distillery is hidden away right in the town centre.
And I was out for a walk the other night, and it's kind of getting a bit like that cold, crispy way in everywhere now in Scotland.
There's a real chill in the air the last few days.
It was just like the kiln must have been on over at the distillery, and I could just smell it.
There's certain days when there's not much wind, you do smell. I remember when I was a boy, what is that smell kind of hovering over the top?
But can you imagine what it would have been like 150
when there was 34
years ago?
working distilleries and they were all doing all the production on site? Like, it must have been incredible.
Everyone's lungs would have been hell.
My family's from the fishing industry. My papa used to be a fish salesman, and the stories he has with the ships used to sort of guide away into Cam's Walk with the smell of the maltings and the swelling. So
that's amazing.
Old photographs, a big haze over Campbeltown, and it was all led down to the distillery.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing.
But it's nice. I like the smell of it.
Oh yeah,
definitely. It's got that stillness, and it's kind of just billowing out the distillery.
So I don't know what it was like where you are today, but today in Campbeltown was absolutely glorious. It was beautiful sunshine.
We were out sunbathing, weren't we? Not quite, but
so we've got one question in from Ian Sutherland. So hello Ian, thanks for joining us. And you're wondering about the production levels at Glengyle Distillery. We did previously kind of mention just a little bit about the fact that Glengyle Distillery isn't in production for 12 months of the year. Since it's been opened, it has varied, I think, year on year, hasn't it? But at the moment, we produce for 3 months of the year.
Yeah, initially it was for 3 months of the year, and then we did cut it back to about 6 weeks per year, and now so we increased it again. So roughly, she's about 95,000 litres.
Yeah. So at the moment, about 90 to 95,000 litres over those 12 weeks. And during those 12 weeks, we have a sort of production schedule. We went for a tour just yesterday with our production manager or director, Finlay Ross, and he talked us through exactly what's happening right now. Glengyle Distillery literally just started producing at the start of this week, so that's why they were filling the first new make into the casks of 2020 this morning. They start the year with making which is quite sensible, the unpeated spirit.
Yep.
And they'll make that for 2 or 3 weeks, I think.
Interestingly enough, we've not released an unpeated.
No,
yet.
so that's a future kind of.
know that?
I don't know. I don't know.
So they tend to start the year with the unpeated, then they'll go into the heavily peated malt, and then throughout the rest they will use the regular sort of malt, so
the slightly peated, lightly
our
peated
core additions, and then they'll finish with a triple distillation week. So that's generally what they're doing at the moment.
Give you an idea. I mean, 95 doesn't seem a lot, but if you came to Springbank 2 or 3 years ago, it would
be like 100. Yeah.
So in comparison, it's not that bad.
And it's difficult as well because you're not seeing that 90,000 now. You're going to see it in 12 years, 12 to 20 years, and even if we do produce like any more in the next few years, that's still going to be a lag of time, which I think is like you're constantly on your tail, aren't you?
Yeah, one thing we've got to remember, that is all kept for sales as single malt. It's not sold for blended purpose at all.
So all the whiskies kept here for our own single malt whiskies. The production here is just the 3 months of the year. It's the same team that are working at Glengyle Distillery right now that produced the whisky at Springbank as well. So the King of Fife, I think it is.
The King of Fife?
King of Fife?
I didn't know the King of Fife
asks.
I didn't know Fife had a king.
So the King of Fife's asking, why don't we produce all year? And that's a good question, and it is a question that we even asked on yesterday. The simple reasons are there's a lot of constraints with that. You need more staff. But not only that, you know, to be able to produce all year round, you explained you would have to then maybe have other equipment installed that is very costly, or you'd need to put in your maltings to make the distillery self-sufficient, which was also another thing that we'd asked them, you know, is there any plans to put in malt floors or anything like that to make it self-sufficient so that we wouldn't have to use spring banks and they could run at the same time side by side. But there's a lot of practicalities.
It's a lot of investment in kit.
I mean, for years we've always wanted to increase more at Springbank, but it was just doing that big jump, because basically we went from 120 basically to doubled it, and that's because we trained up another 6 guys doing the multi-mashing distilling process, so we could basically have a malting team and a distillation team.
And I think, you know, you could, if you weren't thinking about the factors that we're thinking about, you could seasonally hire people and have seasonal distilling team and start distilling for 6 months of the year if you just want to do it gradually. But that kind of goes against everything this, like, our company has an ethos, is that if you get a job here, you're pretty much sorted for life. So we're locked in, but unless we do something really bad.
Yeah, I mean, the sort of the know-how and the expertise is handed down through generation after generation, you know, and I think there's quite a long training process here to be fully kind of on your own in the distillery. And
because the distilling process it's not like that kind of, you couldn't follow a booklet and do it. You know, you have to be able to see that the spirit's just not running quite right. I think one of our stillmen at Glengyle was saying, Robert, the other day, he was saying about, you know, production right now, because we've been closed for a few months, you can see that the spirit isn't going through as fast as we would like it to, or how it would normally go, and it's just obviously because we've not been open for a few months and the equipment's a little bit rusty. But for him just to know that, and it's not from a machine telling him of that, it's just for him seeing the spirit coming through, or, you know, seeing the still in action.
That's the great thing working there as well. It is all done, you know, it's like human sort of knowledge. There's no computers.
It's very much like that.
These guys are monitoring that spirit safe, when to do all the cuts, etc. There's no computer telling you, right, now's the time to cut it, etc. It's through that, so keep an eye on it. Yeah, that's, as you say, it's experience over the years.
It is. It's completely experience, and you can't learn it in a few weeks. So that is like another thing that just kind of holds us. Yeah.
There's some interesting videos.
From getting more whiskey.
If you've got a chance, there's some videos tagged on behind the scenes. There's one of John Wareham. There's a history of the distillery and stuff as well, so definitely worth watching. Yeah.
So I kind of did mention there just initially when we were talking about the production, the kind of stages that we're going through in terms of the malt that we're using to distill, and maybe the distillations, the different types of distillation that we're doing through that 3-month period. And I think one of the things that's really quite different for us as a team at Glengyle is that sort of freedom to experiment. There's this sort of feel that Glengyle is a distillery that people of today, the team that are in place today, are able to be a bit more free to try new things, to be creative. And I did mention that we do sort of a triple distillation at the end of the production period. So there's various different things that we do that are quite unusual.
When you say kind of experiment, that's kind of in comparison to our sister distillery, Springbank, where, you know, we don't want to touch anything there. We want it to be what it is because it's amazing, and we don't want to touch that. And then the Kilkerran's where we can go and have our personal fun. Not that other distilleries aren't doing that, but it's like where we can go.
It's kind of like the next,
exactly.
And it's the next generation's chance to, you know, really put a stamp on the whisky industry, like it make the mark, which, you know, you wouldn't want to start doing with Springbank. So there's various things that we do, and the next whisky that we're going to try is actually one of those, and it's a heavily peated edition.
Yeah, I think that everyone's quite excited for this.
Yeah,
heavily peated's been amazing, isn't it? You all know, you were here when you first kind of tried the heavily peated, wasn't it? You know the story of trying it before it was even 3 years old.
Yeah, the story comes back when I was up in. I was being the UK sales manager, travelling in the UK. So I was doing a show up just outside Inverness at Bogbain Farm, and I was giving somebody the whole story. The garden of Springbank doing unpeated, lightly peated, heavy peated, everything on site, etc. And this guy was like, "Oh, so you do your own malting?" I said, "Yeah." So I was, "Oh, where do you get your peat from?" So the whole kind of conversation ended up regarding peat. So I was giving him this whole story, and he's like, "I can get you peat." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, he's like, "Oh, give me a business card." He was telling me. So I gave him a business card. He's like, "I'll phone you on Monday." And sure enough, a phone call came in on Monday. "Hi, such and such from Bogbean Farm." Like, so I was like, speaking of it, I said, "Right, I'll need to pass you on to the distillery manager." I says, "Great speaking to you, but you need to really speak to the distillery manager." So I passed him on because he was wanting to give us, come down, work with our kiln, and try and get the peat level up. And it's something I said to him, like, "Well, you know what Springbank's like, the peated, and Longbow's heavily peated. So we weren't really interested in getting the peat levels up." But he was adamant he wanted to come down and sort of work with his peat and the kiln. So sure enough, after speaking to the distillery manager, they came down and worked with the kiln and stuff like that. And he did get the ppm level quite high, so it was up to about sort of 84, I think it was. And after doing that, it's like, okay, it's not Springbank, it's not Long Row. What do we do with this heavily peated malted barley? So why not use it up at Glengyle Distillery? So that's where it went to. And so yeah, we done it and thought, maybe we could have a wee sort of thing there, we can sort of do a heavily peated version, that idea. And just before we thought we'd put it on the market, we all tried it when I was like 2.5 years old, and we were going to a few trade shows and like, "Try this." And I was like, "Wow, that's really, really good. What is it?" And I'm like, "So would you drink it? Would you buy it?" I said, yeah. So, "Well, it's not legally whiskey yet. It's only 2.5 years old." Wow.
Yeah.
Then they go, "Oh no, we wouldn't drink it."
So, we planned to put it on the market as a 3 years old. So yeah, and this is now the peat in progress series we're doing. So this is the batch 3 of the peat in progress series. So, and it's a great addition to the portfolio.
And it was supposed to be released in March.
April,
Was it in March or April?
March, I think. Yeah.
And then obviously we closed down for lockdown, and then we if you don't kind of follow us and don't know what we've been doing, but we completely closed down for nearly 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
So we were having a great time. We had complete summer off. But that meant that every release, all the bottling schedules had been completely shut down. So there was nothing happening.
Nothing being produced, nothing distilled,
nothing ready
nothing
to be launched.
Yeah, it was, it was, and I think we'd actually put something on social media.
Yeah, it
like
was,
a little teaser.
And then we had to do the whole stop.
That's a 6-month teaser for you. But so it was quite exciting for us as well to release this, and batch 4 will be coming out as well next year.
So the plan is every 6 months we'll do a batch of the peat.
And it'll be 6 months older than the one before.
I'm quite excited to see batch 4
because some of the older stock and some younger. So it's just really, there will be some older stock in it.
So someone did ask, Philip Wilde asked what the regular Kilkerran whiskies ppm are. So it's about the same as Springbank actually, because we don't have malt barns up at Kilkerran, up at Glengyle Distillery to make our Kilkerran whiskies. So for the standard malt that we buy or that we get, we have Springbank Distillery do it for us. So it is actually peated to the same level as a Springbank. It's about 10 to 15 ppm. The Kilkerran heavily peated edition is much higher, but I would say the ppm is
around 85.
80 to 85.
Yeah.
It depends what scale you're using, but like on the scale that we use for Springbank or
the particular laboratory that we sent them the sample to, it was coming out about 84 ppm, wasn't it? So it is much more heavily peated in comparison to the regular Kilkerran editions. And I must admit, this is batch 2 of this. So this time last year was about to be released, and it was the first whiskey that I had ever tried in the office when I started, and it made a huge impression on me. I love the heavily peated. I mean, I am from Islay.
You're from Islay.
I do like the
classic.
I do like a bit of the peat, but it's not the thing. I do like the peat, but the thing that made such an impression on me was not the fact that it was peaty, but the fact that it's so unlike an Islay whisky.
Yeah, the peat influence
In terms
is
of peat, it's
but there's
there, but
other
it's different.
characteristics coming through.
It's not all. That's
some
not
peat whiskey is
all
peat
of it.
smoke is all you get. Whereas this Kilkerran heavily peated, that peat smoke's there, but they can enjoy the kind of salty vanilla flavours, the kind of bourbon cask maturation.
It's got tropical fruits
I
in
do
it
think-
as well. It's
Yeah.
fruity.
I do think it's down to where the peat comes from, because for our Islay whiskies, for many of them anyway, that peat is cut and used. The peat that's used is from the island, and so you get that sort of real iodine, maritime, medicinal characteristic because of the surroundings where the peat's been formed. But the peat, as you explained, comes from Bogbane Farm up in the north of Scotland, and the sort of environment that it's grown in will be really different to what it is in Islay. And I think that really comes through in this whisky. It's very peaty, but it's beautifully sweet peat smoke for me.
Sweet peat, yeah.
Sweet and smooth and smoky.
Yeah.
And for such a young age, I couldn't believe that it was so young.
I
It'll
know.
be interesting to see how it matures on as well. Because obviously it's working really well.
Yeah, it's
Well,
great
that's
at a
years
young
old.
age, yeah.
And doing this work in progress series, it's like, where do you want to go with it? And that's a whole kind of experimental for us, It's like,
Yeah, well, we might be a few years down the line and go, it's, we prefer it at 3
a
years
younger
old.
age,
So,
yeah,
but that's
could be.
kind of.
But that's
That's
where
our
that's
taste
also it's quite an interesting thing as well for you at home, to be joining us on this journey, because as we release these editions, we're trying them for the first time because they're just maturing, to be released, and then we're releasing them and you're getting to try them and be on that journey with us as it grows and matures for 6 months more at a time.
You've got to look at it. One thing, the whole tasting has never been about price. Look at the price perspective of the product that Kilkerran produce. It's the very, very value for money.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing as well, having one owner. There's no sort of shareholders looking for huge profits every year. It's like putting on the whisky on the market.
And putting it back into the distillery. And I mean, from each batch so far of the heavily peated, there's been about 9,000 bottles of each batch. That goes worldwide. So when you talk about quantities, there's really not that much going. And normally, small quantity will mean big price tag. But for us,
No, I do think all of the
we're going
whiskies
to put
are
it up.
they're very reasonably
But that's kind of what I think Kilkerran was, what we wanted it to be, and it was,
Yeah, same idea. We've done the Work in Progress series. It was priced as the 12-year-old, so it was only can increase subject to the duty increase time of year throughout the whole Work in Progress series.
I do think though as well, like we sort of touched earlier about the spirit and Mr. McCarty adapting the spirit stills as they went in to produce the sort of character of new make that he was after, and that was a spirit that was light, it was fruity, it was sweet, it was quite crisp and clean, with the sort of necks coming up. They were a wee bit shortened right enough, but the line arms, or the what do we call it again?
The line arm.
The line arm. The line
Yeah,
arms
goes like a
ascending
condenser.
rather than going straight across or descending. So that creates, like Cara said earlier, that extra reflux and produces a spirit that's that is lighter and fruitier and sweeter in character, and that matures perhaps a bit more quickly. And if that spirit is so sort of is quite tasty straight off, just like that, because I've heard even the guys up in production saying that they really enjoy the new make spirit from Glengyle.
The new make spirit is
It's
like,
warm straight off a spirit.
Uh-huh.
No, we don't try it straight off a spirit stage, but
Yeah, it's lovely.
that's where we have our staff parties. No, it's really good though.
So it's testament to that new make that we're able to produce
Blow
such
your
good
head
quality
off, but-
young whiskies.
It's like high alcohol, but it's nice.
it's so drinkable.
Yeah.
So we have actually kind of run over by 5 minutes, and we're doing a live chat
We've got someone else
now. So I think we've answered most of the things that we wanted to talk about. There's plenty more that we could talk about, and we'll be willing to share over the live chats. You'll see on the schedule, I'm sure, when we're available to do that. So please just pop in, say hello, and we'll be happy to talk to you. The more the
we'll be here
merrier.
for the next 2 hours.
Yeah, but we're going to be here for the
I'm
next
going to
couple
go
of
make some more
hours.
cocktails.
The next couple of hours, and we'd just like to thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the festival, and we'll see you over in the live chat for extra questions, and enjoy all the other sessions that you're going to. So Solange, thanks for
See you
coming to
later.
see us in Campbeltown.